I hear you. Talk again.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check. Check 1 2.
Ah, there we go. Okay.
All right. Cool.
And I'm going to tweet out the URL. Watch if they want. Oh, the internet's a headache, man. It's amazing that it works. It's so big. So big.
The what?
The internet's just very. It's amazing to me that everything
Oh
functions.
yeah,
well.
it's yeah.
Like look at and like I use.
You just try and think back to how it used to be.
I just think about how hard it used to be to like live stream things, and now like it's a couple little clicks and bing bada boom, you're online, even if you're just an idiot like I am. So hey everybody,
this Jitsi is amazing. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Everybody who's watching, I am John Seth, and I'm here with a ATM operator out of Philadelphia, which is interesting because right now in Philadelphia, ATM operators, many of them are having their ATMs exploded with dynamite. So do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and how because you're actually involved with Bitcoin now, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, I got into the ATM, the regular fiat US dollar ATM gig back in 2008. Got one machine up and running, realized what a jackpot it was, really. It's the easiest way to make money I've ever come across. Then I actually am a co-founder of the Bitcoin Philadelphia meetup group from way back when. So I got into Bitcoin. The natural question was always, well, hey, you're an ATM guy and you're a Bitcoin guy. This is way back when, and why don't you get into Bitcoin ATMs? And because I was an ATM operator, I understood that trying to do both was the totally wrong move. Because as an ATM operator, your banking relationship is the key, right? Because if you can't get the funds out of the bank, it's a cash-intensive business. All the CTRs, SARs, Operation Choke Point, all the anti-money laundering stuff. We basically are always living, walking on eggshells, because if our bank accounts get shut down, if they think anything funny is happening, they're gonna, cut you out. So, and then I think a lot of the ATM operators, Bitcoin guys, they got into it, and it's hard enough being a fiat, a US dollar ATM operator, let alone a Bitcoin operator.
Well, it's a weird. It's an interesting business because I mean, like most Bitcoin operators got into the business new and didn't know anything about ATMs when they started. You, on the other hand, were in the business and got into ATMs after got into Bitcoin ATMs after knowing quite a bit about ATMs. So I know a lot of Bitcoiners who got into the business. Their biggest problem was money relationships with banks. Yeah. So that was kind of a solved problem for you. Yeah, that sounds like it was kind of a solved problem for you. Did you, like, when you started, were they two separate businesses then? Like you had a Bitcoin ATM business and a regular, or did you just not touch the Bitcoin ATM business until you kind of had the green light from banks?
I never touched the Bitcoin ATM business at all until I just didn't see it just never made sense to me. An ATM costs about $2,000. So for me to go and spend at the time, what were those big Rolecoin boxes, right? They were coming out at 20 G's for one of those things. It just never made sense. The banking, and also now instead of the flow is completely different. I go to the bank and I withdraw money from the bank. If I start turning up at the bank and trying to drop cash off and then wiring it to Hong Kong, it's not gonna fly with those guys. It wasn't until a chance encounter with Evan Rose at the Satoshi Nakamoto dinner down at the BitBlock Boom conference a couple of years ago I had a conversation. I didn't even know I was who I was talking to, and somebody had we ended up just chatting about Puerto Rico, and then I was like, oh shit, your Genesis coin, holy cow! And he was saying. I was talking to him about another ATM guy. A guy actually, he was above me. I mean, ATM's kind of like an MLM scheme in a way, where you've got guys below you, you've got guys above you. You want to get at the top of that upstream, right, and have as many people downstream because you get a piece of everything of everybody below you. And the guy above me was looking out. He's still working on it.
So that's ATMs generally.
Regular ATMs.
So you actually kind of got recruited into
generally,
ATMs.
Yeah. No, well, no, it's not recruited. It's not like that. It's not like an active, I just saw the opportunity. I basically, I was at a venue that didn't have an ATM, and it was a cash only venue, and I ended up missing the entire Six a Spoon concert. I saw the first song. I had to go, I went to the bar. They're like, hey, I'm like, we're cash only. Where's your ATM? Oh, it's 3 blocks away at 6th and Spring Garden. I walked there. On the way back, 3 dudes like tried to jump me. I come back to the show, and Spoon's on stage, and they're like, all right, thank you, Philadelphia, good night. And I was so fucking pissed, excuse me. And I'm like, why doesn't this place have an ATM? And I just looked it up and kind of just got into it on my own. But in the ATM business, there's the surcharge and there's the interchange. And the interchange, you might remember interchange fees being a real controversial thing back in the last financial collapse. They kind of put a cap on them. It's not Dodd-Frank, but one of the other bills they did. And so you get a piece of that. So if I'm charging a $2 surcharge, there's an extra 50 cents up for grabs on top of that. And then that gets split between the processor and then the ISO and then up, and then everybody below. So like I have a friend, my friend's dad, he's got a couple ATMs. He processes through me. So I get basically, he can collect his entire $2 because he's low volume, but I'm high volume. So I get a piece of that interchange, about 15 cents per transaction. So I just get him set up, I support him, and I get 15 cents. So the goal is to get as many people below you doing all the hard work, and then I just sit there and get 15 cents for doing nothing.
And what's the difference between low volume and high volume in terms of dollar amounts? Like where does that split end?
Well, once you go, so it's really, if you can, as an ATM guy, if you can just get straight to the top, if you can go direct, if you have the knowledge just to call the company, you can get, the whole interchange. But if you don't, everybody's kind of taking it a piece. They keep it really close to their chest and they don't share. But I do about 10,000 transactions a month, which is pretty high volume. My friend Joe, when I first got in, this guy, Evan Almeida, who was with Empire ATM, he's trying to launch this company called Empire Bit to do, basically to leverage his ATM locations. He wants to pull the old ATMs out and put like dual function ones in where they're like a full Bitcoin kiosk, essentially what Genesis Coin runs, but also to have ATM functionality as well. So it's US dollar, two-way, all this stuff. He had offered, he said, all right, well, once you hit 5,000 transactions a month, I'll start giving you a piece of the back end, and then it just goes up from there, and you just keep leveling up. So I was actually I was talking to Evan Rose about what Evan Almeida was doing, and he said, oh, well, tell him not to waste his time because Gen Mega is that Genesis Coin is not a manufacturer. They're just a software provider. They kind of put themselves out there as a manufacturer, but it's not really accurate. And Gen Mega, the manufacturer of the ATM, he said, well, they're launching, it's just a simple software upgrade, a standard software upgrade. We do these things all the time. Every couple months, a new version comes out, we update it. And it's, he's like, and this is going to be, this functionality is going to be on every single new ATM that ships from Gen Mega. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. I got, really excited. Because, immediately you start going through your mind, like, well, how does this, I don't have to handle any cash. The ATM just becomes a dumb terminal. Mm-hmm. And all it does is use the PCI, the keypad, to collect the card data, transmit the PIN. Everything happens on the back end. But I said, well, who's going to be processing it? And he said, oh, well, it's this guy's called Liberty X. Well, it turns out that I know the guys, Chris Yim and Kyle Powers, very well from Liberty X, because they actually came to one of my Bitcoin meetups in Philadelphia. They were in Wharton Business School. They learned about Bitcoin at the meetup. and they were like, hey, instead of wasting 50 G's a year on Wharton, why don't we just dump it all into Bitcoin? And then they ended up creating the first Bitcoin ATM. They had the first Bitcoin ATM in the country, in Boston South Station.
I did not know Liberty X guys were Wharton guys. That's great. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, they were half Wharton, I think.
Yeah, well, they it sounds like they dropped out early because they're like Bill Gates.
They dropped out early, and then I mean, yeah, exactly. They knew there was better money elsewhere, and and then it's funny because the first ATM, it was literally, somehow they managed to get it into Boston South Station, but they couldn't bolt it to the ground, so they put the machine on the train platform and then sat on a bench next to it. And then whenever, just kind of guard it. And then they would do like face-to-face KYC. So if somebody came up to use it, they'd be like, hey, how are you? We own this machine. Can we help you? What are you buying it for? Yeah, it was pretty funny. And then they ended up getting like 5 or 6 more. And then here we go. It's the cash management issue. Once again, you run into that brick wall. I said, how can we get around this? And well, it's Bitcoin, so let's decentralize it. And then they created a web POS that basically allowed them to go to like not 7-Elevens, but convenience stores and T-Mobile type stores, cell phone stores, and you just go in with cash and you hand cash over the counter, similar to like Red Phone or something like that. And
that's the
clerk just enters your order number in.
That is my familiarity with Liberty X. That's how I've always known them. I didn't know that they were early ATM operators. I'm sure that every Bitcoin ATM operator is laughing at me for not having that knowledge. I've been in Bitcoin a very long time, but I've only ever known Liberty X as kind of like shady, go into the ghetto and find yourself kind of like a banker type person behind a counter to like take money and get you some Bitcoin. So that's how I know them. That's very, very interesting. They're very, I mean, they're all over. They've always been all over, and they were early, which is kind of fun. So that's a really cool story of how you got in.
Quiet, just under the radar, kind of. Yeah. I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit there.
Yeah, you did too. So I think it reduced the video quality for us so that we could keep going. But
right. All right.
But yeah, that's a really neat story. I think that's great. But so you've always been in Philadelphia, right?
Yeah.
And then the Black Lives Matter protest just started a couple weeks ago, and at some point, someone got the idea that it was a good idea to start strapping dynamite to ATMs and blowing them up for money.
Yep.
Which is maybe the funniest theft I've ever heard of. I'm sure it's not funny to you because your machines have been exploded. But let's talk a little bit about, because you're not even in the country right now. So let's talk a little bit about what that's like to wake up one morning, find out that people are blowing up ATMs in your city of operation, and then to suddenly find out that they're your ATMs, that some of which are getting blown up. So in Philadelphia now, how many ATMs have been blown up total? Do you know?
I think it's 50.
And how many have you had blown up?
2.
Okay, so you've had 2 blown up, and I mean, let's talk about it. What did they get? I mean, was it effective?
Nothing.
Is it nothing?
Nope.
Was it? Does it like
hurt? One. Yeah. They got nothing. I mean, there is an irony about trying to use fire to break into something to get paper. Things that are made out of paper. Like that's just not. I personally, I don't think it was about getting the money. I think it was about like some kind of like anti-capitalist, anti-money thing. I don't think it was, because it just doesn't make sense. There's much better ways to break into ATMs than dynamite. One guy got killed. One guy died. I don't know how he managed to kill himself. Maybe the fuse was short or something like that.
I assume it was shrapnel.
I have a video actually. Yeah, I guess. I mean, don't you run away, right? You're not supposed to stand right next to the machine. But yeah, I have no idea. They didn't go into any details on the machine. But the machines they're made, there's 2 separate components to it. There's the vault on the bottom, and then there's the computer on the top. And the top is actually really simple to get into. You can go, you can just easily get in there, but there's also really not much in there to, there's nothing to steal. There's nothing you can do. There's no way you can hack the ATM. So I think what they were doing is they were kind of breaking that open, throwing the dynamite in there, and just exploding the machine. I think there was only one successful machine, and that was the indoor one, where the guys went into the convenience store, were like, hey, to the customers, you guys better get out, and they blew the machine up and got like $2,000 out of it.
I saw the video. I saw the video on that one. That wasn't your machine, right?
No. Mine was the one. It's like Capitol Grill. It was in Port Richmond, and then there was another one in West Philly called Munch outside. And the thing is, they were doing killer business, absolutely killer business, because all the other machines were blown up or emptied out, right? And
so did you notice that? You noticed that they were doing a lot of business the days leading up to this?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. People were pulling lots of cash out. Yeah, for sure. Now, the upside is that these machines are kind of cheap. They're not that much money. It's about $2,000 to buy a brand new ATM shipped to your door. And the return on that, you usually make your money back on an ATM in 6 to 12 months. It's not. And I have a garage with a couple of extra spares in there, so it's not like any kind of. It doesn't crush me. There's no real insurance on them. It's not really worth the insurance, carrying a policy on them. There's another question. It's always the cash insured, and it's not. It's not. The cash is not insured. I think most ATMs, most of the private ATMs you see, the cash isn't insured because it's really difficult to insure cash. So,
that's
all kinds of shit.
Do you do regular pickups with Brinks or something like that, or how is simple cash management with ATMs? Like I've learned with BTMs a little bit that there's a lot of that going on where they have like pickups coming with Brinks and stuff.
No, I don't use Brinks. Everything I do it myself.
Oh, really? So you go to the machines yourself?
Yeah.
You ATM operators, you're a goddamn different breed, man. Wow.
I dress up like a piece of trash. I wear a wife beater, the filthy wife beater. I get on the bus. Nobody knows.
And you just have a bunch of cash in the backpack. Okay, so
and several weapons. Yeah. So
you have, of course, America's a great country. I mean,
yeah, lovely.
Yeah. So you wake up these. So you said you have a video of one of these blowing up, or?
I have a video of it's actually one. It's not my machine. I know who owns it though. We actually processed through the same guy. It was outside of a diner, the Mugshots Diner, or the York Street Diner, it's called. And what I noted, so it was a guy. He was on like a little moped or a scooter, and so he pulls up to the scooter. He puts the dynamite in, and you can see him scoot off. And then the machine explodes, and he's on the sidewalk. And then you see after the explosion's just finishing, he zooms back the other way and just blows right past it. Like he doesn't stop to collect the money. He doesn't just stop at all. He just keeps going. So, I mean, maybe he was going to see if any cash was flying around in the air. I don't know. It just, to me, it didn't look like it was an attempt to rob the machine. It looked like it was just to destroy it. And
you think this is like a destruction and mayhem thing, and people just somehow? Yeah. So they arrested a guy who was selling the dynamite online, or dynamite generally, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean that's weird. The acquisition of dynamite online like that, but did they stop once they arrested the guy?
The arrest was 2 or 3 days ago, and I haven't heard of any since then. I haven't had. It's funny because I get I woke up that morning because I'm 5 hours ahead right now. I just had my phone is filled with texts. Oh, did your machines get hit? And my machines didn't get hit in the first days. They got hit the first day of the riots. There was just explosions. Hearing explosions all over Fishtown.
I did too, and I was I was seeing videos online. People were saying that they thought there was some conspiracy about like the government trying to fuck with them or sending those LDARP or whatever
Yeah,
their machines
exactly.
through the city. And I was like, I was sitting there just very weirded out by it. There's been a lot of very strange fuckery by police officers and stuff like that around the nation. So, you know,
Absolutely.
the possibility of that conspiracy was like, well, that's really weird. What's the government trying to do? And then to find out that the first story that the government told, which is that they were ATMs being blown up, was actually true, is astounding to me. I couldn't. That was more unlikely in my eyes than the those machines getting used by the government for some reason, which makes me want to check my priors. But that's it was amazing, and the video started coming out. So, I mean, do you have cameras on your machines? Like, did you actually get to watch yours explode, or did you?
No, I don't. No, there's there's no. I mean, I'm sure Capital Grill, they probably have a camera pointed at it, and Munch does not. But no, I didn't see it. And I have a guy that's there, who's just taking care of it. And, but yeah, it was all top. I don't have any footage. The only footage I have is of the York Street diner. I just tried to see it. I have it on Facebook, so I was trying to forward it to you, but can't quite manage that while we're on the air.
Oh, we can do it after, possibly later. But
yeah, great. Cool.
So what is the process then? Like, so they explode it. Does the thing actually open up, and there's just no money inside? They like it's an ineffective use of dynamite.
It's completely ineffective. I mean, anybody. I mean, I had some experience with, like you can't just tape a piece of dynamite to something and expect it to blow up. Like, it has to be. It's just that the force is going to go outwards. It's not going to go the way you want it to go. It's not going to go inwards. So it's just, I mean, it always takes the path of least resistance. It was completely and utterly ineffective. I mean, it effectively destroyed the machine, but that's it. Like, you're not going to get into a machine like that with a piece of dynamite. I mean, there is one way I could maybe think that you might be able to do it, but I think, I mean, that's still, like, you have to be concerned with destroying the actual thing you're trying to get.
But you're saying they didn't even want the thing that you think they're trying to get.
That's my personal theory, is that I'm sure they would have taken it if money came flying out. It would have been, I mean, just imagine that too. Like, there's rioters in the streets, right? And you're blowing up ATMs, and now there's just like an airdrop of, maybe this is, maybe it was Bernanke was doing it. He was helicopter money. People,
well, I just have this, I have this vision of people, like you're collecting money from your ATMs. You got you're strapped, you got stuff in a backpack or whatever. And meanwhile, they're going through the city with a pack of dynamite. This is so funny to me. Yeah, like it's just, like the idea, like who's got TNT in their backpack? I just think it's so old school West, like Wild West kind of stuff. That's very funny to me. So what's going on with the ATM placement then? So, like, is Capital Grill, if that was where yours was, are they going to let you put another ATM there, or are you done at Capital Grill? Are you never going to be able to get in there again?
So I only have a couple. I have one other one that's outdoors. Everything else, I have about 40 machines, and those 3 of them were outdoor ones. And it's just, it's having an outdoor machine is already kind of a sketchy proposition just because of vandalism. The weather beats on them. These specific units aren't really meant. They're not made for outdoors. They're not made for extreme temperatures. They're not made for heat. They're not made for cold. So there's all kinds of faults, and it's just generally a hassle. So, I mean, maybe I'll try and sell the location to somebody else, and that's generally the value is having the contract. If you have the contract and you control the contract with the location, there's probably 100 other people out there that would happily take that location off my hands.
Do you not want the locations anymore?
I really have to go. I'm going to have to go back and look and run a report and see if it's worth it, and also see. I mean, I feel really disconnected right now. I'm not home, so I don't know what the energy is like in the city. My friends that are there, it just seems very malevolent right now, and I'm just not sure if I want to take that risk. Also, loading the machine outside is a really risky endeavor. You're really vulnerable because, you know, you've got your back to everybody and you're working, you know, it only takes, 30 seconds, but still, maybe it's just, I mean, it's not worth the money to me. I'm kind of going to cut my risk profile down in general now. It's just my general life. So, yeah, I'll probably pass on, to be honest.
Interesting. So, and that's the outdoor locations, or the ones that are like the ones that blew up? Because it sounds like the ones that blew up were in pretty good locations, not outdoor. Like, were they indoor or were they outdoor?
No, they were outdoor. All the ones were outdoor. There's only one or two, I think, that were indoors that got blown up. That got exploded. Yeah, and you know, it's funny that how this lockdown thing has played into it. You know, most of my businesses are shut. I'm in bars, restaurants, cafes, and they've all been shut for 3 months. And it's Philly, it's Kensington, you know, the heroin capital of the United States. So everybody's got roll downs. You know, it's pretty much looting. It's pretty much loot proof. The only, you know, really places that got looted, I think, were what was it, like pawn shops and things like that were for some reason operating and open.
That's super interesting, actually. There is, in fact, those metal roll down buildings, like in a lot of those cities. Yeah. I've never thought about why that's useful. But until you just said it, that seems obvious. But that is in fact fairly loot proof.
And it's funny, actually, I just saw somebody on Twitter the other day commenting about, what's the Adelgary guy or something? He was asking about why in Europe, you know, if you're in Europe, it's Spain, Portugal, every single building, on even the second and third floors, they've got roll down windows. They're actually built into the buildings, so they're not as offensive, they're not as ugly, and they just can roll their shutters down. Whereas the US, you don't really see them as much, except in like the inner city areas where. Yeah,
I think that's going to change very soon here, because, you know, like maybe Louis Vuitton and them didn't want to do it before, but at this point, I mean, if all you have to do is have a little metal door that you roll down every night instead of those like iron cages that kind of, you know, roll across to solve this problem, I would think that's probably going to happen.
Yeah, I think, I mean, what was that? Was that a gun shop that got looted, right? And it just had the iron grate that pulled across, and because they just ran their vehicle into it a couple of times, and that seemed like pretty lax security. I was very surprised.
Well, it's you know, in the U.S. you don't have riots until all of a sudden we do, and I mean, I'm more surprised on the ATM side that people aren't like. I mean, with Bitcoin ATMs, some of what we've seen is people will go into places with like a big truck. They'll tie a giant rope around it and they'll drive it off and pull it out of the ground, right? I mean, have you had that happen, or do you know people that have done that just with regular ATMs?
I don't know firsthand. I mean, it does absolutely happen. I mean, there was a guy, he had like a backhoe or a front end loader or something, and he tied a chain to it. It's just, you know, to me, it doesn't make sense. It's all about, I think people are they're ignorant as to how much money is in those machines. There's just not that much money in the machines, to be honest.
How much?
Most of these machines don't have.
See, that's cute because you guys don't keep that much machine in your ATMs. Bitcoiners are not that smart. So most Bitcoiners keep. I mean, I've heard of people hitting Bitcoin. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if hitting ATMs is becoming more of a thing right now, because people have assumed that Bitcoin ATMs are sort of similar to like ATMs. Some people in Bitcoin have not figured out the cash management portion, so they're keeping. I mean, I've seen people keep $20,000, $30,000 in a single ATM, which is absurd. So, how much is in a typical ATM?
The basic model dispenser can hold 800 notes. So if you're dispensing $20 bills, that's 16 grand. But, you know, you just basically, I run a report and I set it so that I've been, depending on how convenient it is to me, I know what it goes through. You know, it could be anywhere between, you know, like $2 grand every 2 weeks. You know, we don't really want to get into specifics about
that's fine. But if
in each machine, but you know, I have machines that I put $2 grand in, and it'll last for a month, and I'll go fill it up when it's got 500. But you know, 500 bucks.
Okay, so, but I mean, like, for me, it's interesting because it's an inventory issue. It's just like product, right? Your product is cash dispensation. So you know, like if it's a $2,000 machine and I'm thinking about it in terms of product and in terms of time, like, you know, the ideal amount of time I'd want, you know, things sitting in there might be a day. So like, you know, if it's a machine that's doing $200 a day or something like that, you could put as little as $300 in it, or as much as, you know, 2,000 and fill it every 10 days or something like that. But that is not as much money.
When I got started, when I got started, I didn't have much capital. I didn't have much vault cash. So I would literally go to the bank every single day, take the money from the day before and put it in the next day until I was able to build up my vault cash account. You know, Friday, you know, the weekends would be interesting because it's the busiest time, and I got to get through Friday, Saturday, Sunday. At that time it wouldn't settle until Tuesday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you know, and I'd be robbing Peter to pay Paul to try and just keep the machine full over the weekend until I could get that cash back. So the cash management is the issue, and I think that has something to do with why the Bitcoin operator, because the Bitcoin operator. So with the ATM, I have a really consolidated network because, you know, you want one in every store. So I'm able to service 40 machines on foot, basically. They're all really, you know, in the city. If I wanted to walk to every single one, I could. Whereas Bitcoin ATMs, you know, you don't need the density. So what that means is that for cash management, they have to hire bricks. They have to hire Rhode to service them because, you know, they're based in Florida, but the machine's in Ohio. So they just can't possibly service. I mean, some of the guys do, or if they're either. And what I'm getting at is that Brinks is expensive, so you want to minimize. They charge per pickup, so well, you don't want them to be going there every day and clearing it out because every time they go, that's costing you money, as well. I think they're kind of forced to use Brinks as well for compliance issues and auditing issues. It just looks a lot better to the bank when you've got a armored car company involved because there's less room for, you know, fudgery and stuff like that. But I think that's not that they haven't figured it out. I think it's just the nature of the business model and how widely distributed it is.
It sounds to me like the two are fundamentally different businesses also, because your business is cash management, inventory management of cash. Theirs is inventory management of Bitcoin, for which they receive cash. And that's a much more dangerous business because they got a lot of money in the vault and they have no one manning the store because it's an ATM and it's sitting somewhere, you know. But that also means that their exchange rates are much higher, which is the case. Interesting.
Yeah, that's. I mean, people give a lot of shit to even to Liberty X, like 8%, man, like, blah, 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 you know, and like other companies are 12 to 20%, and you know, it's like you just have no idea what you're talking about, man. Clearly, you've never run a business. Like, you know, there's a lot of expense, there's a lot of hassle in cash management. It's not cheap, and then you're always you're running the risk of losing your banking. You know, Liberty X, I mean, they had to their banking issues. I think honestly they had 100 different bank accounts. You know, because they would just open an account and get shut down. And they just kept having to move and. Yeah.
I've heard of that. That's been the plague of Bitcoin ATM operators since the beginning of Bitcoin. So I've always been like fascinated and amazed by Bitcoin companies that are able to keep their banking relationships for as long as many of them do. And it just seems also for the average like business owner, a high risk. Like, I'm a business owner, I have a bank account. It doesn't really like affect me at all. And losing a bank account would be weirdly devastating. It would be a surprise. It would just, my mouth would drop if it happened, right? Whereas with Bitcoin, that's literally the general operator's modus operandi, and not only that, oftentimes it leaks into their personal lives where they lose their business banking, and then they lose their personal banking as well. So it's a very different business.
The other option, the other option is banking is Silvergate. I'm sure you've heard of Silvergate. And what I heard was that if you want to bank with Silvergate, you have to have, I think, like 2 million or 4 million or something like that on deposit, just on deposit as a reserve completely. And then you have you have your operating capital as well that you can use. So the fees, and then it's like a $10,000 a month.
2 million is like their escrow hold for insurance, essentially.
Yep.
That's really amazing. Yeah, I do know about Silvergate.
Yeah.
That's really I mean, yeah, I don't have a lot more on that end. It just, to me, it's very interesting what happened with you. The fact that your machines were exploded is
It's surreal,
devastating,
man.
but also hilarious, which is,
Yeah.
is unusual and difficult for people to fathom how both awful and funny that is. But
Yeah.
I'm very sorry, but also I'm glad to be here telling the story a little bit. So
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to. I've been a big fan of. I was a big fan of Bitcoin Uncensored. I've been listening to you guys for a long time. I listened to the from way back. Oh, hello. I must have said the bad word.
Can you hear me?
Okay,
No,
yeah, I can hear you.
I had to blur the background because people who are not part of this are in there, so I wanted to make sure that they're safe.
Gotcha. Maybe you just cut me off because I said Bitcoin Uncensored or something. But no, yeah.
No. I appreciate that. So you actually were listening to Bitcoin Uncensored back in the day. That's really excellent. I do have one question.
Yep. Yeah. Way back.
Are you a watch guy?
No. Did you notice? So it's funny. I'm not a watch guy, but when so I've been in Bitcoin for a long time. I've been the ups and downs, and when the last run came along, I guess the 2017 run, after 3 or 4 years of nothing, right, of the doldrums, I said, oh fuck, I need to, I think it was Bitcoin hit 7,000, and I said I need to cash out. I need to take some profit. And I said, well, what's a good stable asset that is useful and practical that'll last for a long time? And so I just went and I was like, oh, I'll get a Rolex, and got a basic one. So and I I don't take it off. It's funny. I've never been a watch guy, but I don't take it off because I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. So I just wear it all the time.
That's funny that you say that, because it is weirdly a stable asset. They really are. They go up a little bit. They go up basically a little bit less than inflation, I feel like, every year.
Okay.
But pretty consistently.
There's something I thought, and I remember listening. So my friends that I'm here, this is a bit of a tangent, but it does have to do with collectibles. It does have to do with scarce, rare numbers, right? So my friends who I'm here visiting, they're the guy who passed away, Don Nisbet. Shout out to Don, he's a fucking legend. He basically, do you know about personalized number plates or number plates in England? How they work?
No, is it a license plate, or what is a personalized number plate?
So in America you can basically buy a custom license plate. It's like $25 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's you just put, and you can just write your own word here. But the way the English started it is that, and your license plate is separate from your car. It's not attached. But in England, your license plate was actually the car's registration as well. So the first car that got a license plate was number. The first plate was 1A, right? And then it was A1, and then it was A2, A3, A4, A5. And then what would happen is you would the car would die, that number would get thrown away. So it's like this. It's this government enforced scarcity of these numbers, and what's happened. So now it's become this status. And this guy Don, he basically invented this business over here, where he said he just kind of looked at this license plate. He said, "Oh, that says like, if you look at the numbers right, it says like John." And he's like, maybe I can find a guy named John who would like that. You know how like the kid in the 4chan they speak, but the numbers and the letters.
Sleep.
Person,
yeah.
It's kind of like that. So like 3 is an E, 4 is an H, and stuff like that. So now it's become this status symbol. And he figured out how to separate the registration from the actual vehicle and then transfer it to somebody else. So I'm sitting here now. He's passed on now, and he's passed the business down to his daughter. And these things regularly go for the lower numbers, like the 2-digit ones, 250,000 pounds.
Holy monkey butts.
To have a plate, so for like F1 or something like that, or F2 or JD or whatever, 250 grand. Yeah. But I always kind of struck me when she first told me about it. It struck me how similar it was to Bitcoin, because it's like this artificial scarcity that's been created. And then there's these numbers that people just, these magic, magic numbers, and it's different in the sense that, a public, I mean, well, there were vanity addresses, right? We used to have the vanity addresses in Bitcoin and stuff like that, which actually cost real money, real computational power to calculate. But another thing is that the registration document. So there's also a public and private key aspect to it as well. So you've got a registration document, and then you have your number, so your plate number. So your plate number is like your private key. So mine would be like JD1. And then you've got your registration number, which is a long string of numbers. And anybody that has that number can transfer ownership of the plate to somebody else. So it's like a bearer asset in a way. I don't know. It always struck me as something that you might be interested in.
There's other places, license plates are very curious in other places. Rhode Island has a similar system where they started early, and they don't throw it away. So what you can do is if you have the number 1. That is in fact the first license plate that was ever issued, and you have the rights to that. You can pass it on to your heirs, et cetera, et cetera.
That's the same thing. I didn't know we had that in the States, so that's really interesting.
It's in certain states, but Rhode Island in specific is one of the first really. So like if you go through the parking lot of the state House of Representatives, for example, Rhode Island, many of them are old Rhode Islanders, but many of them also are rich businessmen, and they've purchased these early numbers to put on their cars. So like anything under 1,000 basically is a very, very valuable plate in that state. It's a small state.
Same here.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But there's all sorts of, basically if you can count it, it's worth something. I love value. I love like collectibles because I think that scarcity management is one of the neatest things that I've ever seen, I've ever witnessed. I witnessed it first in my life a number of years ago when I was a kid. And the Beanie Baby bubble was, going on, and I watched people punching each other in the aisles of stores trying to get Beanie Babies. And then I watched the thing just collapse because Ty Warner decided to, have more Thai women sew more little bean bags. And he seemed to understand the dynamics of choking supply and releasing supply better than anybody else that I can think of for someone who wanted to make short-term, very quick money. And he's now a billionaire. And that's like Rolex is another great example. That's why I absolutely am fascinated with watches, because you have basically a little corporation that does nothing but supply management. There's no reason. I mean, I don't know. Is that a milk house? What do you have there? What kind of Rolex is it?
No, it's a Rolex Explorer.
Oh, an Explorer. So Explorers are they're like GMTs, right? So, but they're hard to get right now, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
They've been hard to. I mean, like anything stainless steel right now is hard to get. Rolex the last couple of years, but the Explorers are great watches. They're very, very simple Rolexes, and they've been out for years and years and years. Their value, I don't know, they're probably $7,000 to $9,000 watches, and they stay right around there. And as time goes on, they go up a little bit. In 10 years, it'll probably be worth $12,000 or $13,000. Not anywhere near as good as if you were like putting it in the market, but it's all scarcity management. If they wanted to, they could ruin the brand. And in fact, they do have a smaller brand known as Tudor. And it's just really interesting, like the whole thing, scarcity management and brand management, and they've been doing it for 100 years. And that to me is really interesting, the fact that they've been able to do it for so long and to understand the dynamics of like basically the Fed. If you think about money, it's exactly the same thing. And you're right, it is very Bitcoin-y. Money is run through scarcity management, and Bitcoin has sort of this artificial decentralized scarcity management engine.
So the irony with this number plate scheme here is that the British government is caught on to all this money. And they're like, wait a second, of course we need a piece of this. So what they've started doing is they've gone back and they've started resurrecting, because they're the scarcity manager. So all of those registration numbers that got binned, now they're going and resurrecting them, putting them out in the market, putting 100, 200 grand in their pocket, diluting everybody else. And then they're like, okay, well now, so they're kind of like making like, okay, well we could just issue this one now.
They're going to get the vanity plates.
Essentially a vanity plate, so it's the value. And like those ones will go for like 250 quid.
The stupidity of it is that they don't understand the business model. So like, if they worked with somebody who understood the scarcity management of the industry, they'd probably be able to continually sell them for $250,000. But as the government's going to do, they're going to get greedy, because it's not money. It's just printing something. They're going to overprint, and then voila, they're not going to be able to get $250,000 per license plate anymore, because they're printing, thousands and thousands, and anybody can get one. And that's just, it's very, very interesting, because there's no reason for them to like cash in on that. It's short-term cash, and all they're doing is ruining a guy's business.
They don't give a shit. Yeah, they really don't care. And here's another, just a little economic indicator about just the state of things right now. So I turned up, and we're dealing with the death of the patriarch of the family who started this business, and it's never been busier right now. They are getting calls for $250,000 deals every single day. She would maybe get one every 3 months before. Now it's coming in every single day.
What's their vig on that? Can I ask?
I think it's like, on something like that, you would make like,
15%. I mean,
no, it's not that much. No, I'd say it's usually more like a flat fee. So I don't know if I feel comfortable talking about that.
No, that's fine. I'm just interested. Interesting. That's a really cool business. That's I'm very, very surprised, but I did not know anything about that.
Yeah, people are worried now. So people are they don't know what to do with the cash. So they're trying to invest their money in things. They're like, oh, well, number plates, the price will never go down kind of thing. And meanwhile, they just aren't. I don't think it's a smart move. I personally wouldn't buy one unless it was just, if I could get like BTC or SAT and just invest it to sell to some moron who wants to put it in his car, perhaps, I would never ride around with something like that. But, it is like, it's fun, but people are investing money in these things because they want to get out of the pound. They want to get out of cash. They don't want to get into equities. They don't trust the markets anymore. And for some reason, they think that vanity plates are somewhere safe to diversify into.
I think people will try to get into anything. I mean, I am a collector of things that are interesting to me. So like watches are very interesting to me. I have a little bit of art that's very interesting to me. I have a fun Bitcoin art collection by Bitcoiners. Let me see if I can show you this. Unblur. So these are pieces done by a Bitcoiner in Ukraine. They're pretty amazing.
Right on. Wow.
They're very elaborate. He's actually very talented. They're very cartoonish, I'll admit.
I love them.
But they're just awesome.
Yeah. I buy Bitcoin. I buy Bitcoin art as well. What I do, I actually try. I like to hang my art, but I also, I don't want there to be anything that says Bitcoin in my house in case I've been broken into before. And I think just having a Bitcoin poster on the wall is just generally a bad idea. I don't want anybody to, get any funny ideas once they this guy's got Bitcoin.
That's why you need a pit bull.
A what? Pit bull? Oh yeah.
I got a Chihuahua. A Chihuahua's good. A tiger would also do. But if you have a tiger and a Chihuahua, you have to separate them.
Okay.
Or the Chihuahua will eat the tiger. So, okay. Is there anything else? That was a very interesting conversation. Much of it about ATMs and much about nothing else, which was very interesting also, though. That's stuff that interests me. I'm a Beanie Baby collector myself. So, I mean, honestly, I think if someone broke into my house, this would be the least of my concerns. They'd really want
Yeah.
Or like my Inky the octopus is probably what they'd be after.
So you still have your curio cabinet full of Beanie Babies?
No, still is not the operative word. What happened is I got out at the top of the Beanie Baby market, my friend. I was a reader. I used to subscribe to Becky's Beanie World magazine. I would get the mag. I would read about it every week. I tried to time the market because I was a sixth grader, I think, and I sold all of my Beanie Babies the week before the market just tanked to Big Al's Animal Farm Emporium or something like that at the Mall of America. I brought them all in. He paid me $100 for every Seymour the seal I had because apparently they had just been retired and it was worth a lot. I don't know why, and I had like 8 of them. And then just most of my beanies were around maybe $10 that he bought them for, but I wanted out. So I did that in the last week. I was a sixth grader. I used to spreadsheet all of my expenses. I think I made something like $2,000-3,000 in the course of my Beanie Babying, which was probably a 8-month business for me, which for a sixth grader was a lot of really good money. And then the nostalgia brought me back in, and I am now. I then 20 years later. Or 30 years, I don't even know how long ago that was. It was a long time ago. I have bought back in. I'm a rebuyer. Because the market is so low now. I can and now because I'm an adult with like income and such. I can afford to buy the Beanie Babies that I just always wanted as a child.
Okay. So
now I've gone back and Beanie Babies that were out of reach before because during the boom they were $1,000 or $2,000. Now they're $50 or $80 or maybe $150. So I've started buying those, and I figure they're not worth anything. They're not going to go up in value. They're going to stay either stagnant or be worth nothing in the future. But for me, they represent a really interesting thing. I think they're a friend of mine named Trooper, who goes by Trooper in Bitcoin, describes Bitcoiners as connoisseurs of value. Those to me are like a value aperitif.
So let me ask, do you think like in 20 years we'll be sitting around like, oh, I'm going to go buy some XRP and some Litecoin just to like hang on my wall as a because it was a cute idea back then, and
I've thought about that. I wonder if people I do think that about like Cassatius coins and stuff. I think that the physical collectibles, maybe even those that are XRP filled and Litecoin filled and stuff like that, I think those are going to be nostalgic things that people are going to really wish that they had bought. I mean, I think it's so funny because I look back at the Cassatius coins back when they were being sold. I could have bought 10 dozen for I think for $5 a piece or something like that, and I just thought that was a really ridiculous.
Even the ones that are spent are collectibles. Yeah,
and I thought it was a really dumb thing to do. And
he's really into collecting those things.
I should have done it. I should have bought.
Yeah. That's one of my regrets too, with not buying them. Yep.
$5, man.
Yeah.
I mean, how stupid! Like all of that. That's the thing. As a collector, you'd think that I would have been an early Bitcoin collector of physical objects, and I just wasn't. And I think it's hilarious in retrospect because I should have been the one to be doing that. That I am an obsessive collector of things. I enjoy collecting. I enjoy having interesting things to look at on my walls. I just enjoy it. I enjoy having things of interesting value surrounding me that nobody knows are interesting, but somebody who comes in, right? And for me, that's the most fun part of having many things that you collect is that when someone walks into your home or into your life and they look and they say, "Oh my God, is that and they see it, it might be, "Oh, you're a Bitcoiner. Is that a Cassatius coin? That's neat." Or, "Oh my God, you're into Beanie Babies. Is that a peanut for Royal Blue Elephant?" Which is going to be rare. But if you have enough objects around your house that are interesting, you're gonna have at least something that somebody recognizes as important and interesting to them. And I think that's the kind of thing that really makes a fun discussion piece, and
it really makes up for having for a lack of personality as well. It's just there's something to talk about. You don't need to be interesting.
Oh, trust me, I know a lot about that. A lot about that. So that's true. And alternatively, if you can actually talk about the thing that you have, that is also very interesting. But so I try to be competent in anything that I actually do collect. The watches, for example, I know quite a bit about the watches. I read a lot about how to fix watches, even though I've never done it myself. I know a lot about what's in them. I just find them fascinating, and I like talking about them. And if someday I'm wearing a nice watch on my wrist and I happen to meet a watchmaker, that will be the most interesting conversation that man's had with a layperson. And he'll be like, that guy doesn't know anything, but he knows a lot for a person who doesn't know anything. And that will be a big compliment.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually just remembered one of the reasons why I bought the watch was because I read an article in Business Insider that if you travel a lot, having a watch on your wrist is good in case you ever get kidnapped. It's a way to ransom. So it's a way to carry back. And for some reason that appealed to me in a way. I do travel a lot. I travel all over the place. But what I found is, like, I spent a lot of time in Nicaragua. I go to India. I go to these countries, and I was like, wait a second, like, this is just ridiculous. Wearing a Rolex in India is fucking ridiculous to me. Wearing one in Nicaragua it's just. I thought it might be a good idea at first. I was like, oh yeah, it's just a way to kind of
That's
carry.
a good way to get around.
Exactly. And
I mean, I'm from Brazil. I'm from Brazil originally. I mean, they would rob you for like a shitty watch. In Nicaragua, Nicaragua's interesting. Have you been there recently with the Civil War?
Yeah, I'm building a house down there. Actually, I was just there in October. Back in January. Actually, I was back there in January.
In Managua.
So it was. It is very interesting. On Pocoyo, so Guasacate, which is the Pacific coast. Cool. It's a big kind of surf area there. And
you look like a surfer.
I'd surf a little bit. I actually left the week before. They call them like the Troubles down there. They kind of refer to them. The gringos refer to them as the Troubles. And it really started popping off there. And I have friends. They expatted there. They lived there full time. And really, it was just supply chain disruptions that affected them. There was never any kind of violence for them. But the Nicaraguans are the sweetest, most amazing people. I love them. Especially. You don't feel any resentment, even though they're the second poorest country. They're actually grateful for you to come there and spend your money. They want your business. They want to help you do whatever you need so that you can then pay them for such. They're happy to. They know that even the government was I think there was like standing orders. Don't fuck with the gringos that are here. Leave them alone. Now, they kind of negotiated a settlement. It's funny, the Catholic Church is like the big mediator there, right? And the Catholic Church was able to negotiate this settlement for a postponed election. And I don't know how much you know about Ortega. His wife is batshit crazy. She's like the vice president now. He said, okay, well, we'll have elections. We'll have elections, I think, in 2022, and and they'll be fair or something. Like, he's still going to run again, and he plans on running again. So I'm talking to the Nicas there. I'm like, well, what do you think? Like, what's going to happen? And I'm like, well, we're gonna have the election and we're gonna vote him out. And I just kind of looked at him and I was like, really?
Yeah, that's going to be
a surprise. Happen? Like, you think he's going to leave?
For those that don't know, Nicaragua is very interesting, and Ortega and his wife are a piece. I mean, if you go through the city of Managua, there are these very weird, like, trees that have been set up, light trees.
Yeah.
And they're very weird looking. They're kind of like a fixture in the city. And I think it was his wife that, like, it was her, like, personal art project.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it was. Yep. It was a beautification project for the neighborhood. You just drive, and you get there. You come out of the airport, and you go into one of the first traffic circles, and you're just like, "What the fuck?
What the fuck is that?" It's like a big metal Christmas tree.
First things that, and it was one of the first. Yeah, exactly. And it's one of the first things they started tearing down during the revolt too. They just started ripping them down because they.
That does not surprise you. He was probably very upset.
It's just this ostentatious. I mean, the people there are so poor; they live so basically, and to be spending money on that garbage is just obscene.
I mean, it is utterly ostentatious. The roads, many of the roads there aren't paved. Like, this is a very poor country, and you're driving through it, and you're like, that's the kind of shit that I would see in like San Francisco or something like that. And the problem is that it's not just one; it's thousands or hundreds of them lining streets. And you look at it like that's a multi, probably $100 million project or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's like the whole city's got electric running through it. It's an absurd project, and that's sort of, for me, like, it epitomizes the presidency of Ortega. Is that it's been kind of an absurd like exercise in just keeping power and keeping his wife happy.
He's running a plantation, is what he's doing, and this is historical with Nicaragua, even with was it Mendoza before, the one that Ortega when they fought with, because that's what happened, was like the communists versus the capitalists, right? And then the capitalists won, but then the capitalists, and they installed democracy, but then they got voted out, and then the communists came back in, and but the guy that they started the war over, he was quoted as saying that Nicaragua is his plantation, and that's the way they run it. It's just a wealth extraction machine. That's all they care about. There's a couple of big businessmen there that have monopoly control over. I think it's Pella. He's the one big guy there that runs the car companies. He's actually done a lot of good for the country as well. But it's just a little money making venture for them. They don't care really about the people. It's a joke.
Right.
So hopefully nobody from the Nicaraguan government watches this. I won't be allowed back in the country.
Well, if I mean, other than Ortega, nobody watches this show. So
yeah, nobody's going to watch this anyway, right? So yeah.
Okay. And, I mean, in some ways, it's for my personal viewing pleasure. I really wanted to talk to somebody who had experienced these ATMs being blown up, because honestly, news sucks. And I think what's interesting is they're only going to report that the ATMs were blown up. They're not going to talk to people that actually had them blown up and get a perspective of ATM operators. I mean, that's really interesting, the fact that someone blew it up, drove away, and then drove right past it. I mean, if these ATM explosions are themselves sort of just operations to disrupt and cause chaos, that's interesting in itself, and I don't think that it's an interesting enough story that news is going to even talk about that with anybody.
I'm very confident that there's an organized operation going on just to sow discord and disruption. I mean, I live in Fishtown. I live in a very progressive. All my friends, they're all very progressive people.
I mean,
some of them associate because they call themselves communists, and they're organized.
Not to be too conspiratorial, but I tend to agree. And I'm hearing stories. Someone told me a couple of days ago that they were getting messages in their town that certain stores were on fire, and stores down the street from them, and they said that they were running to that store to like check, because like they thought they were about to have to shoot some people, and they said that they got to the store was not on fire, and the protests were maybe a few blocks away because they had been diverted by police. So now I'm left wondering, is there like a schedule of stores to burn? Was that store on the schedule? Was it supposed to be on fire, and did the police divert the protest away from it? And then is there somebody not on the ground making these tweets, trying to like cause discord and distribute sort of this mass panic? Because it seems
they used TweetDeck and scheduled the tweet. They had the tweet was scheduled, but the plan went awry, right? And just auto posted or some shit like that. Yeah. Or maybe they're just trying to misinfo and scare people.
They're trending in these locations, which tells me that there's some bots like right there as well.
Yeah.
And so it seems, just from the evidence, for me, this appears to be like a massive coordination effort city by city. And that surprises me, because that feels very conspiratorial to say, but this has the feel in some ways of the riot part of like being under attack in a very strange way by like a foreign country or something. It's very weird. And the part of it being civilians doing the protesting seems to inoculate our ability to actually do anything about the rioting part. Which is a strange feeling and a strange thing to watch, if it is an attack.
Yeah, somehow, yeah. Yeah, it's all surreal right now. It's interesting times. I have no idea what's going on. I'm looking forward to getting back home and kind of feeling the energy and trying to see what's going on. But definitely making alternative plans, getting out of the city at some point.
Yeah, that sounds to me like the cities are experiencing drain. I think that everyone is going to leave the cities. I am hearing anybody with money basically packing their things up. I have good friends who themselves have now purchased a farm and or are about to purchase a farm and are leaving New York. So that's going to be a very interesting dynamic in America where people now it will be normal to be a bugger outer.
Yeah. I thought it was kooky in 2010 when I was, buying emergency food and gold and whatnot. And, now here we are, so, but, I actually have to get, going for a hike on the coast of England.
Enjoy.
So, yeah.
It's a long coast.
Yep.
Are you going to go all the way around?
Yeah. Just
it's just an island.
So it's never. Wait, there's nowhere. It's just a circle. It's just an infinite loop, then, right?
Yeah, you can never be done with. The problem with that hike is you can never be done with it. It's not quite a circle.
Yeah,
it's
right.
more of it looks more like Jeffrey Epstein's penis. But, so
it is interesting though. England has a lot of really. They have these footpaths. This whole network of footpaths across the country. So you can just walk from one side of the country to the other. Yeah, and they're just like these kind of like deeded public right of ways. They have footpaths, they have bridle paths, and spending a lot of time walking on them. It's funny how different. It's funny being here, because you speak the same language and you think that you come from the same culture, but there's this whole other English and the Americans. It's like they're like the cousins that you've never met before.
Do you think that English people would be mad if you called them an archipelago and then included Scotland, Ireland as like part of that?
If you called them an archipelago, you said?
Yeah, and then the Scots and Irish maybe be mad if you did that. To think about it.
No, the only people that really get mad anymore are the Irish. That's what I've noticed. They're still.
That's genetic. That's genetic. All right, guys. Go on a hike. It was a pleasure speaking with you. This is Johnson checking out the Deuce to Stop the Masses and Go in Peace. And Catherine, pray for us.
See you, bud.